And I said, compassion without accountability or responsibility equals enabling.
Hello and welcome to Medicine Wisdom. I'm Lena Franklin, modern medicine woman, transpersonal psychotherapist, and founder of the East Institute. Welcome to Medicine Wisdom, a radio talk show that will teach you that to journey inward is your highest calling, that you have the power to heal yourself, your power and purpose to exist within your medicine. And your medicine is the gift your soul came here to share with the world. And I am so deeply excited and honored to welcome our guest for today, Alyson Charles.
Yay.
Yes, Alyson is a revered shaman and author. She is devoted to her medicine of embodying the shamanic path and really reconnecting people into their fullest divine power through sacred practices. She's the host of Ceremony Circle podcast, the best-selling author of Animal Power, and so much more. I just want to send a loving, light-filled welcome to you, Alyson. Thank you for being with us.
I receive your love. I invited in fully, and thank you. I'm so happy that this moment has arrived. And when you were reading your show description in the intro there, I wanted to get my rattle out when you were talking about the journey inward is the most powerful thing that any of us can do. And wow, so true. And I feel like this year, 2023 really embodies that more than ever before. And I know you and I have been on the path for so many years, but I'm just excited for more and more people to join us and to have that same realization that you spoke about.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting because we have some common denominators and connections in our own path. We were both, high level athletes, collegiate athletes. I know you also, came from the TV world, if I'm remembering correctly. And so it's been such a joy to journey alongside you on this shamanic path and really being stewards of this work and of the medicines that flow through others from their soul. And so, yeah, I'm excited to continue this work and to co-create together. So thank you.
Yeah. And it was so nice, even, in the 10 minutes we had before we went live right now, and just sharing that we're both in the same similar energetic space today. We're both coming out of weekends of really, really deep, potent, powerful ceremonial work. And then when I said to you, I can feel my cocoon coming inward, and I can feel I just need to give a minute to charge my battery even more. Like, we just effortlessly and naturally, as shamanic sisters, like, I didn't need to explain what I meant, and we just went silent and just sat in like a silent space holding each other. And I was reflecting as we were doing that. I'm like, it's just so refreshing and glorious to have friends and colleagues and sisters on the path where we can just navigate moments like that. It was beautiful.
Oh, it was delicious and beautiful. And absolutely, it's like this knowing beyond the surface, beyond the words, which is that deep energetic connection, that soul connection. And that leads me into speaking of the soul, and the soul in this, we were laughing. I call it this meat sack that we're in, this human form that can feel kind of wild at times. And I know we're in a really accelerated time right now, energetically, but I want to hold some space for you, Alyson, to share, where you sit today in your work is such a potent place. Author, teacher, podcast host, and I have always loved your medicine. And in this moment, I have this kind of more expansive reverence for the work that you shared today. And so, one of the things I feel like is such great medicine. It's such an access point into others, continuing to be on the spiritual path, continuing to awaken to who they truly are, to remember who they truly are. Can you share some about your journey and perhaps some of those initiations and catalyst moments of guidance that have put you where you are in this moment?
Yes, I will. I will tune in. It has been, as you know, quite a journey for me to arrive in a deeper understanding and knowingness of who I really am and why I'm here. And I just want to honor the truth that while I am more embodied than ever before and in so many respects wiser than ever before, and I've gained really deep mastery in a lot of areas of life. And with that, I realize more than ever before that I don't know much of anything. And, the expanse of the infiniteness of all the unseen realms, and even all the textures to learn here in the earth plane, the expanse of all that is left to yet be discovered is very present with me as well. So I just always like to speak to that because I love that paradox of, like, the deeper you get on the path, the more and the wiser you get, the more you're like, I know nothing. So yes, my journey to arriving here in this now moment, let me tune in to the initiations that want to be shared, because there have been so many. Yeah, the journey of learning, as you put it, my personal meat sack, my personal earthly vessel that I incarnated with has been a big one. I began my athletic career at just 2.5 years old, and I think that that's somewhat unique because that began a journey for me where at the time I didn't know it was happening. It's only after my awakening and hindsight revelations where I realized, oh, wow. In a lot of respects, I was this like child star. And
Mm-hmm.
when we think about that term, oftentimes we think about child star actresses and actors, and we know the tumultuousness of that journey because we see that play out a lot. A lot of them fall into addictions and just like really turbulent lifestyles, because I think anytime we as humans start something that's super intense and super devoted and super focused at such a young age, it just kind of sets forth a unique trajectory in some respects. And that was definitely the case for me. My dad was my distance running coach, and he put me in my first road race before I was even 3 years old. And it just set forth this incredibly deep learning initiatory time. Even at that age, looking back, I know, I think it's, about around age 4 or 5, I felt I needed to make the decision. And the decision was, do I keep my spiritual attunement as open and connected as it is right now? And do I keep my seership, because my seer ability is probably my top gift in terms of strength and clarity? Do I keep my seership in full activation mode? So that's, and my connection to God, goddess in full connection mode. So that's pathway option 1.
Mm-hmm.
Or do I greatly dim and suppress all of that in order to preserve my relationship with my dad? Because it just felt like I had to make a choice. And, I'll kind of whittle this answer down so we can keep flowing. But that decision point really was a massive initiation for me, because it then took so much to get me to reawaken to the truth of who I am and why I'm here, and to reawaken to all of my spiritual gifts and abilities. And there's so much in between that decision point around age 4 and then when I had my divine intervention spiritual awakening moment, which was a simultaneous moment for me, which is at this point, it's really tough with me with earthly time, but I think I had my awakening somewhere around 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to answer any questions about initiations in between that point. But I guess I'll end by saying my soul kept a brief sliver and a brief, like a small thread of my truth alive. It was like, we can't let it fully die out. So I can look back and see the only books I ever read were self-help and metaphysics and learning how to read palms and the healing power of colors. And even when I was a hip hop radio show host for many years, I was doing dream analysis for the listeners who would call in, or I would be booking psychics to be in studio with us to do
Um,
readings for our listeners. And so there was like, even before my awakening, there was that subtle aliveness. And then through the divine intervention, my story with that, it was the cataclysmic kind where my egoic shell got obliterated. The veil that I had so staunchly pulled down across my third eye got lifted
mhm.
instantaneously, and I was left in the raw truth that life as I knew it was not what it really was. I was left with the truth that I was not who I thought I was, and the truth of the relationship that provided that awakening, that it was not at all what I had been deluding myself to think that it was. So I was in a lot of suffering and denial leading up to my awakening, which caused me a ton of suffering and a lot of pain.
Mm. Just really sitting with all of those pieces. And I I can see, that thread of light that stayed with you into the more cataclysmic dissolution and fracturing of the ego, and the false self. And the question that's coming through, Alyson, as we're really sitting in the depth of your heroic human journey is, how were you able to, one, recognize the initiation kind of coming on as it was moving through you and through your life, energetically and emotionally? And as you move through that really challenging, painful time of suffering, what did that look like? What did that feel like? And what gave you the courage to continue on? Because as well as I know, have gone through multiple incarnations of my own ego death and dissolution. It's it can feel so massively dark, and there's a seduction to going back into the illusion
Mm.
that you've co-created with, you know with your world, with the universe, and those old stories, right? The ego throws up these stories to kind of keep you trapped in that web of fear. So for you, what was that initiation like, and how did you continue on in the depth?
Oh gosh, so much poured in as you were talking. I was like, try to keep track. There's 10 pieces that
Yeah, I
came
know.
in. Yes, the darkness piece was super present through my awakening, because one of, if not the main pieces that I had been in staunch denial and illusion around was the threat of addiction being at play in my previous relationship. And to me, I was just too scared to face those realities. And so I put the blinders on, as we humans have a tendency of wanting to do, especially if we haven't gained a deep sense of cultivating a trust within ourselves to know that we are capable of handling the full spectrum of earthly emotions and the full spectrum of potential earthly experiences. If we don't have that trust embedded within us, there's just a natural tendency to shield and want to hide and to keep stuffing down and back the things that feel very gremlin-y and dark and scary, because it's like, I don't know if I can handle all the feels that will come with that. And so after the veil got lifted, and I saw the truth of my ex partner's addiction struggles. The scariest one for me was his sex addiction struggles. There was something about the the body piece, and like
Mm-hmm.
the energetics and the dishonor that comes, yeah, and just like the texture that comes with that specific addiction felt super, super, super scary for me to delve into and to fully face and alchemize, transmute, transcend all the things that I steadfastly did for so many years. And I remember when I would first start to enter into those caves to like really get to know it and really face it, I would only be able to enter in briefly and like kind of get a dose of an understanding, and then I would take a breath and then I would exit back out. But I think that's pulling me into a different part of the answer of one of the other questions you asked, of like, what has kept me going, is when that veil lifted and I saw the truth of myself and that relationship. I knew I needed to go to Indiana, where I'm originally from, and I stayed at my grandmother's house. I feel tender even saying her, talking about her. Yeah, she's someone I was very, very close to, and she passed away about a year and a half ago. But I was just thinking about her before you and I went live, actually. She just feels very present today.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing her into our space.
Yeah, so thank you, Grandma Bernice. She was so loving, like, gosh, so fortunate to have her as my grandma. And I stayed in her back bedroom, gosh, for I think like a month or two. And I continued to have awakening after awakening back in that back bedroom, spirit just taking me back to all these different experiences I had in life, but without the veil of denial anymore. So it was like a life review, but I was still here living, and they were showing me like all the places where I had suffering, but it was showing me everything illuminated and in truth. And I just knew there was just something that landed in me where I knew I could not allow myself to go back to those cycles of insanity and suffering like I had had it. I couldn't withstand that pain and anguish anymore. And knowing, anybody who has lived in denial and then had a realization and an expanse into illumination and truth.
Yes.
It's wild, because when you're in denial, you don't know you're in denial.
Right.
And then when you're out of denial and you realize you're in denial, for me, I just knew I couldn't go back. And there was just something that turned on inside of me that set me forward into complete devotion to the divine. Mm-hmm. And the last little bit that I share, that I'll share right now, is that a monumental piece in that for me was speaking a true and genuine surrender statement to Great Spirit, to Great Mother Earth, and of course to my own soul. And I just truly put my hands up and said, I clearly do not know what I'm doing, and I am ready to be shown the way. And I meant it. And the next big important piece is I have heeded those calls, because, it's easy to say you're ready to change, and it's easy to send a prayer up to spirit, but are you really going to live that prayer, become the life of that prayer? Mm-hmm. And that's one thing, so many years deep on this path, that I really do give myself a lot of acknowledgement and honor, self-honor for, is that I have so courageously and devotedly heeded every call that's come my way, no matter how illogical, scary. And one of is using the title shaman, saying yes to the shamanic path, sharing these shamanic teachings so publicly. The first vision that I was ever given, once I started to, go to all of these different healers and devote to healing myself, because I never set out to be a shaman. I think that's such an important point for me to get across, that I just knew I needed to heal. And it was in my devotion to healing that the truth inside of me and the soul calling inside of me and the medicine wisdom inside of me finally had breath, and it finally had room to inform me, and it had room to open up and illuminate. And so, yes, I was shown that not only am I a medicine woman, not only am I a shaman, but I would need to be very front facing and outward facing with these teachings. And I would be merging this newly found truth with my past life in the media. And so it has been a wild ride, as you know, Lena. And I guess I'll take a little pause here. But yeah, that's some of my answer.
Mm. Oh, I'm really seeing this radiant image of a lotus, like you embodying the courage and being in that really deep and anchored place of devotion and transmuting and alchemizing the mud of the suffering of that relationship and allowing that to be the sustenance to grow the lotus of your soul, the lotus of your medicine. I see that so potently in this moment. And I really I honor I honor you and that journey. And I feel like it's so important. I too am like, okay, yes, there's so much coming through this conversation to tune into. What I'm feeling guided to kind of lean into a bit is what you shared around this calling that you never set out to become or to learn how to be a shaman, but it was this deep inner calling through the deconstruction, through your healing journey. And that comes from this deep embodied wisdom beyond the cognitive mind, beyond the ego. And it's like embodied. Embodied is the word that continues to come through. And what you shared also really brings me back to my own deconstruction in my past marriage, and that that mantra or that prayer that came through you that really was coupled with your devotion to move forward on this path with each and every calling that came your way. The one that moved through me was underneath the full moon, when I knew everything that was false was falling apart. And I was willing for that to happen, even in the midst of such pain and anguish. Underneath the full moon, the mantra of, I will follow the call of my soul, no matter what it takes, no matter what it breaks. And your journey had completely brought me back to that moment. And for the listeners tuning in, I feel there's so many teachings in this, in listening to the deeper part of yourself and being willing to host discomfort that arises in service of who you actually are, being willing to let go of who you've been taught you should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope I didn't interrupt you, but what was coming in to make me pipe in here is one of my favorite phrases. I'm pondering writing a book with this title just because I'm just so obsessed with it lately. And it's just two words, and the two words encompass everything, at least to me. And the two words are in relation.
Mm. Oh, yes.
Right? I
Yes,
mean,
I have full
it's,
body chills. Yeah.
I love speaking to it because I think if, someone did recently ask me, like what has being on the shamanic path, as long as you have, and in the ways that you have, has it most afforded you? And when I closed my eyes to tune into the answer to that, I saw this massive, beautiful spider web. And it was just, that web was holding so lovingly and reverently and encompassing the totality of all that is. And I was taken to that web and realized that I'm at one with that web. And it's like, because I am at one with the web of totality, no matter what scenario or life experience, even really challenging ones like loved ones passing away or getting pregnant and having a miscarriage, or no matter what the texture of the wave or challenge or experience that comes in, I'm just so able to healthily be in relation with what enters into my life experience. And I'm able to so healthily feel everything that needs to be felt. I'm able to healthily access old rage that I didn't even know was there, because, side note, anger is one of the trickiest
Mm.
feelings possible. It will hide itself and convince the human that you don't have any anger inside of you. I don't live inside of you. And it like tucks its way into these tiny little nooks and crannies until you devote to really exploring that piece. And then you realize you've got a lot of old rage and anger, whether from this lifetime or past, stuff down in there. And so I am just, one of the areas I've gained mastery is in really healthily, fully feeling, and giving the right proper space and expression for everything that needs to be felt and heard and acknowledged. And at the same time, I am so steadfastly in complete trust that this is always, everything is always serving me. There's always beautiful medicine and lessons and teaching. And I'm always tuning into, where is the growth here, and why did this come in to guide me? And thank God I'm so adept at my clairaudient gift and being able to hear spirit speaking to me. Or when I had my miscarriage, being able to so clearly hear the spirit of the baby telling me why she came in for those 9 weeks, and what was happening through the clearing of that miscarriage. And so I'm able to be fully human and in the earth plane and feeling the earthly emotions. But as a shaman, I'm able to, as you know, have a foot in both worlds. I'm also so connected to spirit and all the communications of my guides in the unseen realms. And I'm able, I've had so many friends and colleagues tell me that they sometimes get in awe and learn so much in witnessing me and my processes and witnessing me and my rites of passage and initiations, because they're like, you handle it with such grace. And it's just nice to hear that, because again, just back to that web, I am healthily in relation with all that is. And I think that's truly the key to life.
Mm-hmm. The wholeness, like that web, I see it and I feel it, that medicine of interconnected wholeness moving through you as an invitation for all those that connect with your energy, with your teachings, with your books. And that's, we talk about the shamanic path, that coming home to our wholeness as a human family, as brothers and sisters, and children of the divine, that we're not separate from the divine. I mean, that's the weaving of the coming home to our interdependence in Buddhist teachings. We call it that interdependence. And I'm so glad you piped in and chimed in to share that, because I want to continue diving into what it actually means to be a shaman and to be called authentically and devotedly onto the shamanic path. Because, as you know, there's a lot of demystification that's needed. There's a lot of conversation out there around who a shaman is, who a shaman's not, who can be a shaman. And I fully see you, sister, embracing and embodying the path of the channel and the intermediary, 1 foot in this physical 3D realm and 1 foot in the unseen divine spirit realms. And after we go on a short break here, love to dive more deeply into that topic. So yeah, we're going to go on a short break. We will be right back here shortly with Alyson Charles. And after we come back, we will dive deeply into demystifying shamanism and the importance of sacred feminine leadership on this planet at this time. Be right back. Welcome back to Medicine Wisdom. I'm here with beloved shamanic soul sister, Alyson Charles, and we've been diving into the potent medicine of her spiritual awakenings and what has really guided her onto this path of deep reverence to being on the shamanic path. So, Alyson, I would love to continue the conversation around what is shamanism. And for
Mm-hmm.
those tuning in, of course, many have heard the term, but I feel there's this need and also urgency to educate and talk about what shamanism is, what it means to authentically walk the path of the shaman. So, can you share with us?
Yeah, so much coming in. I never get pieces of paper and notes out, but I was like, man, yeah, of course. You and I, when you were on my show on Ceremony Circle, it was the same thing when you and
Right.
Jeff were on. It was like all these downloads before you guys came on. I was like getting readings. And then when you told your story, I was like, wait, remember that moment where I
Yes,
was like, the
yes.
piece that came in. It's so wild. So, yeah. So, oh goodness. So with shamanism, yeah, let's just start to weave together because when you asked me to come on with you today and I was tuning in to what we could possibly talk about, it just really revealed this shamanic education piece. And I think there's something extra powerful about two women coming together and specifically two women shamans coming together
Yes.
from different backgrounds and different walks of life. And here we sit united, being sisters on this shamanic path, bringing our divine forces and powers together. And the one other little interesting thing I is coming through to share is, the difference in when after I had my awakening and started to realize the truth of who I am, it was being shown the visions and told the next steps that I needed to take to put myself out there and to get more and more healthily embodied as a shaman. I began by facilitating all of these really beautiful and powerful guided shamanic journey events. This was when I was living in New York City for many, many years. And I was just organically and effortlessly like partnering with all these huge brands and all of these major hotels and having monthly full moon drumming guided shamanic journeys on the rooftop of the William Vale in Brooklyn and all of these things. And it was so powerful to be able to activate consciousness and shamanic remembering in a place like New York City, the place where I had the veil lift for me, the place where I had my
Mhm.
spiritual awakening, and to be able to give back to that vortex, to those powerful lands of New York City, and to help guide others into the remembrance of who they are and awaken their own medicine wisdom inside. But what was interesting is after a number of years of so devotedly and exhaustively pounding the concrete jungle and doing that work day in and day out, the call from spirit began to come in and it started as like a somewhat medium whisper of like, you need to educate people. And I was like, oh, I don't hear that one. I, I will stay doing my talks and events. And then not long after that, the message came in so loud that I actually was instructed, commanded more like by spirit to cease all events and cease all talks. And mind you, I was living on my own, trying to make ends meet in New York City, and which I think is the world's most expensive city, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm like, really? I'm supposed to stop every aspect of my career that's allowing me to live here on my own. I'm supposed to stop all events and all talks. Okay, I will do that. And I did honor that. And that portal of taking that sacred pause lasted nearly 3 years. And that was
Wow.
such I just actually want to give thanks and glory to Great Spirit and Great Mother Earth for commanding me to do that, because in that time I went deeper than ever before, did the most powerful shadow work of ever before. And it so steadfastly got me into such pristine, pure alignment with the pacing and energetic that I needed to hold with divine. Because what happens is, with a lot of us that do this work publicly, like ego can get at play and these human aspects can get at play when you see other friends on book number 10 or other friends booking
Right.
whatever. And like, when you're trying to hold and balance being both a public figure and a medicine person, it
Right.
is the wildest effing journey of your life, is it not?
100%. It is every single day one of my most wild practices.
You have to be
Yeah.
so skilled
Yeah.
and you have to be so in integrity in doing so many checks. And I'm not saying, and I know firsthand, not every public figure spiritual teacher and public figure shaman is in integrity. And it's like, it's just an easy thing to have different systems get away from you. But I'll progress to the shamanic education piece because that's what we're trying to focus on. My point in sharing some of that context and backstory is that it's a very different thing when you are a shamanic practitioner facilitating and holding space for and guiding ceremonies, journeys, rituals, and healings. That is a very different path than being a shamanic educator.
Right. Right.
Two totally different things. And I did resist the shamanic educator piece quite a bit because I could feel, it was already challenging enough to like fully put myself out there so courageously, especially being given the instruction to use the title shaman, knowing the sensitivities that can carry and the snap judgments that people can place. And also, being a woman and coming from the Midwest and having the background in radio and athletics, like I am a shaman that is far outside of any box. And it's by divine design that I was given this particular meat suit to help rattle people's tight constructs of what a shaman is and help them to expand out of those tight boxes. And so there was just so much that I've had to reconcile and keep an integrity check along the way. And I have now for many years answered the call to be a shamanic and an initiatic educator. And the thing that I like to start with is just the foundational piece. And there's a lot of nuances, and I know we need to get into those. But the foundational piece of shamanism is that every single being that lives not just in the earth realm on planet Earth, but also in the unseen realms, it's the birthright of every single living being to learn how to get to know and to communicate and connect with honor to planet Earth and get to know and communicate and connect with honor to the unseen realms. And at the core nucleus and center point of divine truth of what the foundation of shamanism is, that is what it is. Learning how to hold that line where the name rock star shaman comes from, connecting with rock, great mother Gaia, planet Earth, and the star portion, great spirit, the unseen realms. And so there's that birthright that we all have. And I also like to share about what I call the origin seed that every single living being has. We all have this origin seed that holds in it the divine truths of all that is. And it's just a matter of, so we all have these shamanic ways and medicines and remembrances held in this origin seed. But then it's just a matter of how willing are you to allow that origin seed to open up and germinate and sprout and become who you are. And then as that's happening, as you know, and I'd be interested if you want to speak to this, like the shamanic calling is a very, very, very specific texture. And some of it is just ineffable and goes beyond the ability to use human words to try to describe and articulate. The shamanic call to be an embodied shaman who operates in a devoted way to be a shaman, it's just a specific texture and calling. And it's different than a calling to be a starseed channeler or be any sort of other ritualist. It's a very specific call. And then there's the call where you feel on a soul level or in that origin sea that you want to lean into shamanic practices and shamanic ways. And you might feel a call to sit with a shamanic high priest in Bali, or sit with a Taoist shaman, and you're guided there, and you know that they have a key or a code for you, but you don't have the call necessarily to like be an outward facing shaman teacher or facilitator, and so this is where we start to get into all these different pathways and nuances. And then while the foundation of shamanism is the macro planes of planet Earth in the unseen realms, well, then is the shamanic truths started to migrate their way around all the world, and there's shamanic traditions on every single continent. Well, then we get into there's different specific cultural, traditional shamanic practices. So if you get called into those traditions, then there's things in there that you have to be extra mindful of. And so I'll take a breath because I know there's a lot to unpack. So that's some of the education.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Use the word texture. You're absolutely right in we're doing our best to use these English human words to describe something that is so vastly, expansively beyond cognitive comprehension. So just kind of a pin in that. But yeah, that calling to be an embodied shaman in this particular realm, outwardly facing, is this knowing, like this knowing that feels, to me, the best way I can describe it, it's like you would be in complete self-betrayal if you did not follow that calling. And that is very different than being interested in, learning about rituals or even engaging in shamanic healing. I mean, this is your existence and the totality of why you're here on this planet at this time and why you incarnated here. And so, there's so much nuance there, and it's the inner journey that I so often talk about, especially in the shamanic teachings and the meditation teachings. The more attunement and interrelationship we have with that inner guidance, the more we can differentiate the various callings that we are connected with, that quieting of the spaciousness, the emptiness, so we can actually tune into the truth with a capital T. And I was even, in ceremony this weekend, what's coming through is one of the ceremonies we facilitated, one of the common denominator themes was liberation, and liberation from the falseness, from those fear-based aspects. And of course, not all, but many, of the people that we are working with in facilitator training here at the East Institute, that call is that non-negotiable, that knowing that no matter what it takes, no matter what it breaks, I'm following this path.
There's no other option.
There's no other option. I mean, I feel sick thinking about taking another option.
Well, then there's that term, shaman sickness. You do get sick if you try to staunchly ignore the call.
Completely. And that was a big part of Jeff's path. And because Jeff was, the doctors gave him 3 months to live because he had been on this alternative path that was not in alignment with his soul. And so I think, that's a really important point that's kind of coming through this conversation, that shaman sickness, that when we are out of alignment, we are, our cells, this like biological body responds in this way. So there's no separation between the alignment of our words and our choices and our thoughts and our soul. Like when we're out of alignment, that manifests in the body.
Yeah. And as per the theme of our interview, so much coming in. Yeah. And what's interesting for me, and what has been my saving grace in this wild initiatory path that just seems to continue to carry with it so many teachings, is like, if I'm right and good with God, then I'm good. It's like I'm given, these instructions and told to, present in these ways, knowing, and we're called medicine people for a reason. We
Yeah.
carry medicine, and not all the time, medicine isn't meant to go down easy all the time or to taste like candy all the time. And that's been one of the biggest pieces I've had to reconcile, because I'm such a kind person and I'm so loving and I have such a pure heart and I'm a good time. Like, I'm really silly and I'm really goofy, and I'm a good person, and I'm honest, and I have a lot of integrity. And I know I carry powerful, potent medicine and transmissions. And I know that sometimes when I just simply walk into a room, certain folks can get blasted with certain just energetics that they're meant to, that ultimately serve their highest, greatest earthly good. But if they aren't carrying themselves or knowing themselves in a way to learn how to decipher like what exactly is happening, or when a trigger comes in, like what is the teaching of that trigger, or knowing that when a trigger hits, the most important work is to like face yourself in that rather than project. Like, there's so many things that can happen when you're a medicine person. But what has gotten me through is just knowing I live in devotion to the divine, to the pure divine. And I live in devotion to the instructions and guidance and calls of most benevolent and high God, goddess. And so it's like, no matter where the boat rocks, or no matter the triggers or the waves, or no matter like the tumultuousness of being a public shaman, it's like, I know that I'm right with God. And when I am right with God, I am good. So I wanted to speak to that. And the other piece that felt important to speak to is like, you and I are the types of embodied teachers and practitioners where we also just as fully embrace our human side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to speak to. I hold and is dear in my heart the human me as I do the shaman me. And the path of shamanism is not, swirling around continuously in the ethers and learning, what it looks like when Ganesha visits you in the ethers. And like, yes, it is that. And another huge piece of what is a shaman, what is a healthily embodied true shaman, it's the ability to audaciously and nonstop face ourselves over and over and over again, and
Yes.
embrace our human side. But I think the key piece with this is, yes, we have human tendencies. And yes, we're here in Earth School to infinitely evolve and learn. So with learning, oftentimes comes flubs and flaws and mistakes, but it's like, what do we do with that piece? Like,
Yes.
when a human tendency comes in, when a human behavior comes in that could potentially be harmful, are we the type of person to catch that? Do we allow ourselves to catch that human behavior and tendency? And are we willing to correct it? Where the issue comes in is when people do not take responsibility, and there is no, what's the word? I came up with a quote. I haven't posted on Instagram yet, but I have the post of the quote card made. And I said, compassion without accountability or responsibility equals enabling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I get so tired. You can tell I get fired up about this, and I'll take a break in a second, but I get really tired of people that say like, oh, just have compassion for that person. They're human. Yes. And it is our freaking job and responsibility to face that stuff, to learn, to correct, and become a better human over and over again. I have such little tolerance for people that just constantly and exhaustively use the freaking excuse, have compassion for me, I'm human, and and freaking do something about it. I don't know if you're allowed to cuss on your show, because we're live. Okay.
Anything. Yes. This is open space, whatever comes through.
So yeah, I'll take a beat, but it's like, I just, I know we're all human, and I'm human, and I live in devotion to facing myself. It's not that hard.
No. Ugh. Amen, sister. I mean, I feel this every day. I feel this so deeply. And this is the balance of all the realms. We can't privilege being in the unseen realms, being in this this place of, we see it so often, right? That spiritual bypassing of not taking responsibility, of denying those human aspects because it's too uncomfortable to look at your shadow, to look at where you are continuing to perpetuate fear and create story, versus being courageous and willing to meet yourself every single day. And this is a lifelong practice. I think as especially as a shaman and a spiritual teacher, in the forefront, that message is one of the most important, because we lead not just with the shamanic lens, but with the humanness, the authenticity, that yes, even we can falter. I mean, even recently you talked about anger, which really relates also to, and that's a whole nother conversation, but the awakening of sacred feminine leadership and the denying of that aspect of anger and rage that I repressed so deeply within myself, and had a story that I had already processed my anger. That was a layer that needed to come up and out this year, through the fiery anger that was like so deeply bound in my liver from all of the lifetimes of betrayal and oppression and abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse. That is the meeting of the self. How can you continue to have the courage to do that every single day and take responsibility for your thoughts, take responsibility for your words, take responsibility for your actions, and make life a living ceremony?
Yes. And 3 minutes till we close, so I'll go hurry. I'll hurry with it. But yeah, we're at such a precipice moment right now of clearing out so staunchly right now a lot of these old paradigm systems. And I, having been in this space for so long and being so closely interconnected with so many other spiritual teachers and shamans in this space, it's an important thing to have very strong and wise discernment in terms of who you sit with, who you share space with, because I have personally witnessed, and it saddens me, but it's the truth, that there are a lot of public figure spiritual teachers who could not be further out of alignment with the divine and could not be further out of alignment with integrity. And so, it's not fear mongering. It's just something where, as more people have these awakenings, and as more people are feeling that origin seed and that soul-led call to immerse in different ceremonial practices and rituals, take your time. Just because your friend or your cousin sat with so-and-so, it doesn't mean that that's the right practitioner or guide for you. And, I want to recommend to people to really tune into themselves and really take a moment of prayer and meditation before they say yes to things, until that refinement is really developed in themselves, because there are a lot of teachers out there. And I love my husband and I love men, but just from experience, the women leaders of this time are the ones that carry just such beautiful integrity. And I think it's important to speak to that and honor that.
Aho, sister. Thank you. I feel like that is the perfect place to punctuate this potent conversation. And in the last few moments, can you share how people can connect?
Yeah, I think the best way, you can find me on Instagram at I am Alyson Charles, and Alyson is Alyson. My book and deck, which are bestsellers, Animal Power Book and Animal Power Deck, are available everywhere books and decks are sold. I think it's 20% off on Amazon right now. And of course, Ceremony Circle podcast, where I've had Lena and Jeff on, and a lot of other incredible integrity-filled spiritual teachers from around the world.
So grateful for all that you are. Thank you for everyone listening in. And please join us next week on Medicine Wisdom, where we'll welcome Melissa Ruiz. And remember, the world needs the gifts only you have. What is your medicine?
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Medicine Wisdom. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. If you're interested in learning more about this week's guest, be sure to check out the show notes below for the links. And don't forget to follow me on both Instagram and TikTok at I am Lena Franklin. Join me every Wednesday on my YouTube channel for new episodes of Medicine Wisdom. Aho Munai.